What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward. Talk about some very important factors involving the market, so what you should be watching for as time progresses. Let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, Fortress are doing a good job at holding up thus far, but just notice we have some resistance to be watching for around this 217 area and also at 220. So we'll just have to see what kind of reaction we get from Tesla, at least from this open. But just note that the market is opening at resistance. We're going to be watching to see how well we could hold up as we have a big test coming. So just so you guys know, there's not really much data coming out for today. Today is Monday, August 19th, 2024. We have Waller from the Fed giving a speech. Then we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions coming out at 11:30 a.m. It's not really too much that's too important, at least for today, in terms of data. Now, for news about the market is pushing up so nicely, at least thus far, as we saw the S&P 500, the Nasdaq futures, not to mention the Dow Jones, all pushing very, very respectively. But the question is, can we maintain the structure as we approach resistance? We have some big earnings coming out for the week, a lot of retail for those who are interested. And besides that, there's been some more talk about some geopolitical matters that's making some headlines, but nothing too insane right now. So that's what I'm seeing, at least thus far, for the news. For earnings, just notes that we have Palo Alto Networks approaching its earnings, at least after the market closes. And tomorrow we have lows and a lot of retail between Tuesday and Thursday. Last thing for Teslas, I was looking at the headlines. I didn't really see anything so far at the time of recording this video that was too significant for Tesla. But I do want to note that there's been a lot of comparisons being made to the Model 3. It's one of the best choices for EVs in the US, as it's getting a lot of attention, a lot of popularity, but there's a lot of rivals, especially in China, like XPeng and NIO, that have their competitive vehicles from the L60, not to mention others out there, such as the Mana MO3. So we're seeing a lot of talk about their competitors trying to, decrease prices and trying to make their way into this market. And I think that's very important because, Tesla has a lot of competition with the Model 3. I think the Model 3 is one of the top vehicles anyways, but don't forget that the competition will affect its sales. So we'll see how things end up continuing as time goes on. I still, wish the best for everyone, especially Tesla, and we'll see how things go. But looking at the share price, I'm going to be looking at this 217 areas resistance for Tesla. If we manage to break this, I think we're going all the way up to about 220. If we don't break this, we could come back down towards like this 215 area, followed by the 211 area. That's going to be our 200 EMA. But as long as we hover above this white trend line, we're still going to be in an uptrend. Tesla will be completely fine. So we'll see how well Tesla performs right over here. We're at some tough resistance right now. Looking back, let me just find this. Tesla's still in a very, very critical place, and I think there's a good chance that we will continue to hold up. But the question is, will we retrace like this a bit before we continue higher? Or will we, end up coming back down to this trend line and continue like that? Just wait and see what kind of reaction we get, or if we just start pushing from open. And watch 221 as a key resistance as well. If we manage to break the 220 area, we could be pushing for 225, and eventually 230. So overall, Tesla is still quite bullish, but watch and see what kind of reaction we get to this resistance. That's going to be very pivotal for Tesla. In my opinion, it's doing a great job, like I said, at holding up. I think the odds do favor upside for Tesla later on, but there could be a little dip in the morning before it continues, in my opinion, so just be mindful of that. For SPY, I had these lines drawn out yesterday. The question is, will we break and hold above the 556 resistance, or will we end up rejecting and coming back down? This is going to be a big test. We actually are very close to that area right now. We did push in the morning only to get sunken back down. So we're currently at 555 on SPY. Will we push to 556 and break through it and then start pushing all the way up for that 560 resistance? Or will we push a little higher and then reject? I do think there's a risk of this happening. So this line right over here. So be careful. It is possible SPY pushes a bit, but be very mindful of that resistance at 556. It might slow things down just a bit. And this might lead to a little move to the downside closer to about 550 later on. So watch and see if we push a little higher and see if we could hold above 556. If we hold above it or close above it, we do have more upside potential. If not, we could be looking for a rejection. So just keep that in the back of your guys' minds. ES has the same thing going on. We're looking at that 5600 area. So like right over here, will we pump through 5600 and turn bullish, remain bullish? or will we end up pushing to resistance and coming back down, all the way back down to the lower 5500s? Will we get a rejection off 5600? So watch that carefully. It's going to be a tough resistance. We have a nice cup-like structure forming on ES. So we will see if this cup is forming a handle or an inverse head and shoulders or not. Honestly, guys, I wish I could give you a nice prediction, but we're just waiting to see what the reaction is. So just wait and see. SPX is going to do the same thing. We're going to be looking at this resistance at 55.75. Break it, we could be pushing for at least the 5600, the gap resistance. If we reject it, we could be retracing back down to the lower 5500s. So give it some time. Nvidia is trying to push a little bit, but look at this resistance around 125. If we break that, we could be filling the gap towards 126, and we'll see if we reject or not. If we end up dipping back down, look at support around 123 and 121.5. One thing worth noting is the fact that as we push higher, we're slowly slowing down in terms of our momentum indicators. So I think there's a good chance that we could push a little higher for that 125 to 126 area, and then we'll see if we get a rejection or not on Nvidia. For a temporary dip, that would be completely normal after this very vertical move. So watch resistance between 125 and 126. We could push a little higher, but there is a risk of Nvidia returning to 123, if not 121.5. And even if it does dip a little bit, it could still bounce later on. So watch and see the resistance. That's going to be very tough. For Bitcoin, making lower highs, I do see a risk of returning back down to this low right here around the 57,000 area. So it's starting to downtrend a bit. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if it dips a little bit. So it's not anything too crazy. The QQQ we pushed very nicely. We're currently at this resistance right here. So let's see the red line above. That's going to be our resistance. Will we reject here and start dipping on the QQQ and come back down like this? Will we fail to break 475 and just end up dipping? Or will we hold above 475 and start breaking out for 480 and start pushing very nicely into the 480s? So watch that 475 area and see if we can hold above it or not. We will have to wait and see. So far, it's trying to hold up, and there's a chance it might try to break this resistance. So just wait and see. Do we get a dip first before we continue higher, or do we just straight up continue from here? It depends on 475. Can we hold above this resistance? I'll be watching that very, very carefully. For Aapl, I see that this resistance between 226 and 227 is kind of tight. If we break 227, we could be pushing much higher towards 228.5. And if we reject, we'll be dipping all the way down towards not only 225, but also 222.8. So I do see a risk of Aapl dipping a little bit towards 223. So be very, very careful right over here. We might be retesting 225 and eventually 222.8 to 223. We might dip a little bit on Aapl because resistance is kind of tough here. So watch and see what kind of reaction we get. Supermicro is the same thing. We're kind of flat right now. We'll see if 640 ends up breaking, or if we end up losing 600 to dip down towards 580. We're kind of stuck in the middle. So give it some time and see if we break or not. That's going to be very key for us. For the IWM, basically, we're going to be looking at this move right here. Will the IWM push up for 216 to fill that gap? We have this resistance at 213 that's worth watching. So let me just mark that right over here. So we're looking at 213. Can we break that or not? If we don't break it, we could retrace back down to where this yellow line is. And then that opens to a less bullish case where we can dip down to like 209 to 210, and then we continue higher later on. So watch that 213 resistance. Do we break it and just continue to push for 216? Or do we reject here, come back down before we continue higher? But either way, the chart looks bullish to me. But just know we'll be watching to see what the reaction is. Coinbase looks more bullish. We're forming a nice structure. As long as you hold 203, I could be looking for 210 very soon. If we lose 203, look for 199, and then eventually a move back down to the mid 190s. But this favors upside. Amazon is looking more bullish. I think that this might try to push up for 180. If it breaks that, this imbalance could fill for 184. If we end up dipping, we're going to be looking for this trend line over here around this 175 area, 174 area. So for bearish, we're going to likely lose 177, dip down to 174. And for bullish, you want to see a test of 180 and a break through that. I'll be watching to see what the reaction is. For Meta is once again at this 525 area as support. If this fails, we're going back down to 520. And if we hold this, we could try to rebound. Watch 525 as our supports. We'll see if that holds. If it doesn't hold, I think there's a risk of this coming all the way down to 520, if not 512. I think Meta might dip a little bit. Maybe it pops in the morning, continues lower. I think there's a risk of us dipping down to like 520. So be careful with Meta. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. For Microsoft Microsoft has resistance around 425, and then we have support around 414. We have a nice accumulation structure that's forming. We've dipped a little bit, so we could retest this 415 area before we try to rebound. So look for a little dip on Microsoft, and we'll see if it could bounce or not. So I'll be watching that 415, 416 area. Google's turning more bullish. It actually managed to break past 166. So it dipped a little bit all the way down towards 163, only to bounce. Look at 160 as resistance to see if we can break through that. Anyways, guys, that's it for my video. I've been going on about these charts for a while. Please have a great day, and just note that Tesla has upside potential, but we're going to be looking at these resistance levels, especially at 217 and 220. If Tesla just breaks through them, we will continue to squeeze. If not, it could dip first before continuing higher later on. So far the chart remains bullish, but make sure you watch your resistance levels just to be safe. Thank you for listening, and peace out.